Greetings and welcome to Flanigan's Ecologic. I am your host, Ted Flanigan, and today I'm very pleased to have Dr. Barry R. Davis on the podcast. He studied at MIT in biology. He went on to med school in San Diego, University of California in San Diego, got his PhD in applied mathematics from Brown University. He was at Brown at the beginning of his career, and then he shifted to the University of Texas, where he has had a distinguished career. He has a new book that's out called The Preventioneers, came out in May of this year. Talks about diseases, disasters, and the discoveries that have changed the world. Barry, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ted. Glad to be here.
And as we said, you're in the Houston area as we speak, right?
Correct. It's pretty hot here right now.
Is it?
Yes.
Houston and London and Paris, I guess. They've just had this terrible heat wave in Europe. So,
well, this is usual for us. It's not anything out of the ordinary.
I remember when I was in college, I remember visiting a friend in Houston. I'd never been. I'm from New York, and I was in Houston, and I think he was the only person that had a car with no air conditioning. And
wow,
it was miserable.
Oh yes, it would be.
You got that humidity, but that's been home for you for many years, right?
Yes, it has been. Yes.
Well, tell me about the book. I mean, as I understand it, you've had a long career in medicine, in looking at diseases, and you're a bio-statistician, I believe, and
yes,
you've applied math. You brought together this nexus between medicine and mathematics, and now you've written this book, and it's pertinent to climate change, because I think your basic premise is that even when we have lots of evidence that suggests that we should be taking action, there's something about human nature that holds us back. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, I've had a long career. It's the School of Public Health. And I've been interested in prevention for many years, but I've been actually living it in terms of the work that I do is mainly in hypertension and in clinical trials and trying to prove that things work and why you should treat hypertension, and so it'll prevent things like heart attacks and strokes and kidney failure and so on. But I was very interested during the pandemic, wondering why people were having a hard time with things. And I decided I would investigate the phrase, because it kept on rolling over and over in my mind over many years: an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah.
And many people don't know, but a lot of people do, that it's from Benjamin Franklin. But many, many people don't know that Benjamin Franklin was not referring to anything medical. He was referring to fire. He was into fire prevention from an early age. He lived in cities where fires took place. He learned about the history of cities like London, where they did something about dealing with fires. And eventually, besides writing about it, he had a great platform. He was the publisher of the Pennsylvania Gazette, so he could write things. He had a funny way of doing it, though. He wrote letters to himself anonymously. So he had a famous letter in which he wrote about on the protection of towns from fires, in which he used that phrase. And he gave advice about preventing fires and suppressing fires. But then he went on to form the Union Fire Company, which was one of the first fire companies in the United States. And he actually joined the company. He became a firefighter, which is amazing, considering Franklin had his entire life. He knew so much. He did so much. He was in so many areas. You can make a list of all the things. You need a couple of pieces of papers to describe his occupation.
Fascinating.
But so I went from there to investigate this whole concept of prevention.
Yeah.
I have a board certification in preventive medicine, but it got to me, and I realized that all the stuff is going on. It's all the same thing. And I start with the fire prevention chapter, but I am with climate change. Because in my mind, climate change is the biggest prevention story of mankind. It's one thing to have a fire which can actually end up destroying part of a city or a city itself, but climate change is on a planetary scale.
Yeah, right, right. Well, was Ben Franklin suggesting at that time when he was writing to himself and responding to himself that people just the same thing that people know that that they ought to take an action, but tomorrow or mañana or that's not going to happen to me, or was it the same
Exactly.
dismissing the obvious?
Yes, exactly. People at that time thought, well, fires happen, it's just the cost of living, doing business.
Yeah,
And he said, no, there are ways to prevent fires. And he listed the ways to prevent fires.
yeah,
And then as I said, he lived in London, and for a period of time in his life, and they had this huge fire. I think it was 1666, the Great Fire of London, which destroyed most of the city.
yeah. I've read about it.
And afterwards, they realized that there are ways to prevent fires, and they came up with a bunch of ideas, and Franklin borrowed those. But it was, don't build houses close to each other. Don't build them mostly of wood.
Yeah.
If you have a fireplace, don't coat it with turpentine because can cause a fire.
Yeah.
And so he had a bunch of other ideas, and he put those in writing. But he realized too that you need to have, if a fire happens, you need to be able to put it out quickly, and you need to have quick response. So he came up with all these ideas. But his main contribution, I think, which lasts all these centuries and still with us, is that in order to have prevention, people need to work together. They need to come up with ideas. They need to have a shared responsibility. They need to have systems in place to deal with it. And it's just not an individual kind of thing. It's a community or a governmental thing that needs to be done.
Right, right. I'm horrified. I live in California, about 5 miles from where we had the Eaton fire last January. Took like 9,000 homes. It was another 6,000 plus homes and wiped out in the Palisades. And now they're being rebuilt.
Right.
And a lot of them are being built with traditional stick-built, wooden framed houses.
No, I mean, there are so many ways that you can do to fireproof a house, not only in the materials that it's built, but in what's put outside the house, how close the houses are together. Plus, you have to have warning systems in place such that people can react quickly.
Yeah.
And, we should learn from all these disasters, but some of these should have never happened. But in that case, the fire started because of all the winds and the heat and everything else that's going on.
Right. Yeah, understandable that it was caught a lot of people off guard, but like we're saying, you need to have as much prevention as possible, early warning systems, and then certainly the construction needs to be such that it's to the greatest extent possible. Well, let's shift back to your role as a physician, because you started off talking about hypertension and blood pressure. And I presume you're saying that even though there's a lot of hypertension out there, that many, many people are not being treated for it?
Well, many people are being treated for it, but the problem is that many people who are treated for it are not what we call under control. Their blood pressure numbers are not low enough. And over the years, we've learned that number gets lower and lower, and people should be treated. I mean, everybody's a little bit different, so you have to vary it. But the overall goal is to get people to a certain level. There are a lot of people who have hypertension or aren't aware of it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who are aware of it but are not treated for one reason or another. They're not in the health system. And then there are people who are in the health system and are being treated, but for one reason or another, it's not being treated as well as it should be. So it turns out that for all the data, there's about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people who are presently under control. So that means 80% are not at the right number.
Really?
So you can imagine what a great effect that would have on the number of heart attacks and strokes and all kinds of things that happen with high blood pressure if we could just do that.
Now, our listeners must be asking the question, or will be asking the question, What is the right level? I don't want to take us off the topic too
Oh,
far, but
well, there are guidelines, and the guidelines might differ between Europe and America, but
yeah.
basically it should be like 130/80.
Hmm.
Other people believe it should be a little bit lower than that, but that's the US guidelines.
Right. And is that taken at a certain hour of the day? I mean,
Oh,
my
okay.
gal and I
Well,
take our
yeah,
blood pressure all the time. It's
that leads to
crazy.
a little bit of controversy too.
Yeah.
It's just taken at a certain time, but you have to be like relaxed. You shouldn't have had coffee like in the first 10, 20 minutes before it or something.
Yeah.
And it's taken over time. I mean, one can't react to just one blood pressure reading. You have to do it over a few days and maybe twice when you actually do it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people will go to the doctor, and if it's high, they might say, "Well, let's take it again tomorrow or in a week or so, and we'll see."
Yeah.
But eventually, if it's high, you need to get it treated.
Now, why is it that 80% of people are not at the right level?
Oh,
What's the litany of reasons for that?
Well, there's a huge list.
I'm sure there is.
Right. Well, the problem is that people are not taking their blood pressure as medicines as they should. They're
Yeah.
not adherent.
Yeah.
They sometimes the expense of the medicine can get in the way. They're usually blood pressure medications are pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Sometimes the system is such that it's not captured all the time. Even though the doctor looks at you when you come in and sees the blood pressure is slightly elevated, they said, "Well, let's wait till next time." So instead of moving up the schedule a little bit, it's a little bit lax sometimes.
Yeah.
And then people just deal with it. This is the problem with prevention, is that blood pressure is actually known as a silent killer, because when you have high blood pressure, you really have no symptoms.
Yeah.
And it's sort of eating away at you year after year after year unless you lower it. But that was the problem with the prevention all across the book, is that the results of prevention are invisible. Nothing happens if prevention works.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if the fire prevention works, no houses catch on fire.
Yeah.
If the blood pressure prevention works, people don't have heart attacks and strokes. I talk about auto safety in there. If the cars are made safer, when people have an accident, and accidents happen, they'll walk away from the crash.
Huh. It just goes out of sight, out of mind. Back to the blood pressure. A lot of people are probably saying, "Oh, I have a stressful job, or I'm raising children, or any number of reasons for it," and maybe thinking that things will get better in the future.
No. I mean, there's a stepped way to treat blood pressure, and there is this thing called lifestyle, which you have to adjust your diet and do more exercise. And all the physicians will tell their patients that they should do that. And it could have an effect for people who are sort of just at the edge, where it's just above what we consider a good number.
Yeah.
And if they would exercise more, but people don't have the time necessarily, and if they would eat right, well, that's a tremendous thing to tell people to do. That's just incredible. One of the ways to eat right is to eat less salt.
Yeah.
But so the way to really get at it is to use treatment.
Mm-hmm. Now, why isn't the health insurance industry all over this? I know you tried to set a global
that is a
standard for
great question, Ted.
Okay.
And you could ask that question about many, many things in medicine and public health. Why isn't the health industry all over this? Because, as I said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And literally, in terms of money, that is true.
Yeah.
If they would invest in a thing like blood pressure control, if they would invest in some other things, then you save all the heartache and all the money that eventually will come from this.
Yeah. I mean, they could be distributing blood pressure monitors to their...
Not only should they be doing that, people have in the past recommended that they give the medication away for free.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know with my insurance, I take a lisinopril 2.5 milligrams. I think that's a very low
Yes, it is.
dosage, but I think it's a $5.
Right. Right.
Very inexpensive.
Well, I've known people that, were on medication, and if they have a plan, some of the medication is free
Yeah.
at a certain level.
And it should be, in your view.
Yes.
I mean it's obviously
Talk about
so
saving
much
money.
Right. Well, what you mentioned also that this difference between individual action versus collective action.
Right.
And I presume if we go back to the arena of fire, collective action might be building codes and things like that are
and
policies.
Organizing fire companies,
Mhm.
and the way people put houses together and so on. Yes, it's all part of it. And
Right.
having smoke detectors in your house.
Right. That work, right? That the batteries
Yes, yes,
that
yes.
work.
Right.
So obviously you're in favor of collective action for many of these things. Does that work with blood pressure?
Yes, that's true. It would. A lot of people are part of a health system, and as you mentioned, if they have monitors, and I've had a monitor for years where I take the blood pressure and it would upload, but all of a sudden the company stopped that, and I still have my blood pressure monitor, but it doesn't upload to a site and they don't look at it.
Right.
So it's just me, unless when I go to my checkups.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the kind of things where people are in it together. The whole health system should be aware of ways to treat blood pressure to get to a certain level and incentivize it. There are some health systems that are doing a pretty good job, but this should be like put on a more collective, I'd say national scale would be great. It gets to the question, Ted, of individual versus collective responsibility.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody should have personal responsibility for their lives and what they do and all that.
Sure.
But we all live in a society. We live in civilization. If you want to go off the grid and go into the forest, great. Live on your own. But if you live you have collective responsibility to your neighbors, whether it be that your house doesn't burn so theirs doesn't burn,
Right.
or your kids get vaccinated so that the disease doesn't spread to everybody else who, for one reason or another, maybe they have some disease where it's hard for them to get vaccinated, or we all obey traffic laws. Nobody says, well, I don't want to stop at the red light.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's just good collective responsibility.
Right. Let's bring this to the pandemic. You mentioned that you really started to dig in on a lot of this during writing your book during the pandemic. Did we botch as a country with the pandemic?
Well, in some ways we did. But in other ways, no. I mean, the miracle of those drugs being put together in the course of 1 year is an incredible story. And that has saved millions of lives.
Mm-hmm.
But the beginning, it would have been better if people had communicated better, if our leaders had communicated better, and if people had listened to at least the part about isolating and not trying to do things that would end up spreading the disease.
Yeah.
I mean, hindsight's a lot, but we knew a lot beforehand. There was an Office of Pandemic Preparedness. Everybody knows that there was going to be a pandemic someday, and there will be another one.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully next time we'll do better.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should think of ways that we could do in terms of this. I mean, this whole thing relates. The reason, I start with fire, but because of Benjamin Franklin's phrase, but I end the book with, as I said before, climate change, because it's the biggest prevention story of our age.
Well, let's dig in. Let's dig into climate change, and I mean, this again. Does this get right back to human nature that people are saying I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do as an individual. It's out of my control. Some people don't even believe in it. They think it's a conspiracy or whatever. What is in your view, after having written about this and studied human nature as you have and been a statistic, you've been looking at the statistics deeply. What is the solution? What do you think?
I wish I could wave a magic wand.
I do
But
too.
yeah, but there are several things that people should. First of all, they shouldn't be fatalistic, saying there's nothing we can do about it. That's not
Yeah,
true.
right.
In terms of personal things, yeah, there's a lot of personal things you could do, but if everybody else doesn't do them, so much for that.
Right.
Well, the thing is, you have to. I mean, the number one thing that I have to say this is that you have to vote for the right leaders and the right people in order to get change at a governmental level. But the other things that you could
Yeah.
do is there are things in your community that you can do. I mean, it's kind of too late to prevent climate change. So all you can deal with now is adaptation and mitigation. Mitigation, you try to lessen the carbon emissions, and adaptation, you try to build things and do things around you so that when we have these extreme weather events, it's not going to be as bad using
Mhm.
design or something like that. But in your community, there are probably things that you could do, help organize or at least contribute to certain things that would help uh, the community adapt to something. So at a community level, at a personal level, but at a higher level, it's up to the political leaders.
Right. Well, I think in your book, or at least in some of the writings that I scanned preparing for you, climate change is not preventable now. We are past that point, no longer preventable. The cost of delay that's already taken place may be irreversibility. And now, as you said, now we mitigate, we adapt, and we become more resilient.
Right. The other thing that I mentioned in the book, I mentioned a few areas. I think that it's more of the responsibility of the media,
Mm,
uh, reporters and so on, that they should spend more time on this issue. Right now there's a little bit of time spent on it because there's this huge heat wave in Europe.
yeah,
Um, and when we have like the fire that you mentioned earlier in California, or the big flood we had in Texas a couple of years ago that ended
yeah,
up destroying one of the camps and killed a
yeah,
lot of children.
terrible. Yeah.
Time is spent on that for a few days, then we move on.
Hmm.
Well, instead of trying to do that, they should all have, and a lot of them do have climate reporters and climate journalists, but they should have more time on the news. I think it would be great if every night on whatever news thing you listen to is that somebody talks about it just a little bit. And people themselves need to talk about it more, not just ignore the issue. And then the other thing is that in
Hmm.
government, there should be more thought to what's going on. Some cities have these things called heat officers whose
Yeah.
responsibility is to deal with that. Well, it'd be nice if it was at a state level and a national level to deal more closely with climate. And the other thing is people, one of the reasons the way I wrote the book is that people react to stories. You get
Yeah.
something interesting, you're interested. If I present just a bunch of charts and data, people will fall asleep.
Right.
Uh, so in the media, it would be great if there were things. I mean, once in a while, you'll see a movie about climate. Sometimes it's unrealistic. Sometimes it's a little more realistic. I mean, there's just a movie out now that came out. It's called The Welcome Table. It's a documentary. I don't know if you're aware of this one.
No.
Just came out on HBO. It's about the great migration that's going to come from climate change. And some people estimate that about 1 in 3 people will have moved because of climate by, I think it's the year 2050. But people move. I mean, look at all the people. You mentioned that California fire. How many people have moved and not come back?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
many people in New Orleans, when they had the huge hurricane, have moved and not come back?
Hmm.
Um, there are areas of the world where there's drought and so on, and people just leave. It's uninhabitable. So, if we had more of this, that would make it present, even if it's a fiction movie, a good movie.
Yeah.
What I would like to see, there's a book by Kim Stanley Robinson called The Ministry for the Future. I don't know if you're aware of this book. It's a science fiction book, but it's hard
Mhm.
science fiction because it deals with climate change. I'd like to see a movie made out of that book.
Yeah.
Uh, and then there are all these things, and I've discussed in the chapter about literature. People just reading a book could be There are a lot of nonfiction books about climate change. In fact, there are a ton of them. But, there are a few books out there about climate change in fiction. There are plays out there. People even sing songs.
But
I know
why
you
is
once
it
had
that
a
it's
person on about music at one time, didn't you?
yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but why is it that this topic hasn't been elevated in the media or in the movies and in literature? I read a lot, and I must say I'm besieged with World War II books about World War II. I don't know, is there some, you know, fascination with World War II that just won't go away? I mean, what we've got on our hands here with climate change, like you said, the biggest preventable manifestation of
The
disaster
biggest
that we
prevention
could.
story of our time.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just as I said, what happens is that there's a pattern with prevention.
yeah,
You see the warnings. We saw those. In fact, a lot of the book chapter is about James Hansen.
yeah,
And you see the warnings, you gather evidence, which he did,
yep,
um, and then you try to translate that into something useful, and then hopefully that can be implemented. Well, when you reach various stages of that, you meet resistance. You meet incredible resistance. And in every chapter, there was resistance, no matter what the method of prevention was or what they were trying to do. Well, in climate change, obviously, I'm sure you've had 281 episodes. You can talk about all the resistance that's been met,
sure,
whether it be from industry or government or just everyday people. Where's the climate? What are you talking about? Why should I do anything? Nothing's really happened. Yeah, these things happen once in a while, but so what? You present evidence that shows it's increasing at an incredible rate and
yeah,
that people still are not persuaded. So that's the kind of thing when you have these issues, it's very hard for people to change, especially when it's far off. Something terrible is going to happen far off in the future.
yeah,
So it's up to leaders to do something. And
yeah,
that's why each of the chapters, I highlight one or two or more people. Um,
hmm,
and you think that these people we rely on these people who would lead, tell us more, tell us what to do, show us the way.
right. Well, you mentioned James Hansen or Jim. I've known Jim for a long time,
Oh, okay.
and Al Gore, of course, with The
Oh, yes,
Inconvenient
yes, yes,
Truth. I
yes,
mean, that came out years ago,
yes.
and I mean, the word frustration comes to my mind.
Oh,
Are you frustrated now with, just this aspect of it's not just human nature, but it's our culture that is.
yes. I'm a little bit frustrated, but I'm also very determined
Yeah,
that, it's never too late. Something can be done. We just need to persist. You have to show the evidence, tell the stories, convince people. And if that doesn't work, you have to go back and think of another way to do it
and do it again.
and do it
Right,
again. I mean,
yeah,
look at how many podcasts, Substacks, newsletters,
yeah,
books about climate change. There's a ton of it out there. And it still doesn't seem to have made a huge dent, but hopefully it'll chip away at it.
right, right. Do we have any good examples of things that were flagged to be preventable, and the right policies were put into place? I mean, I suppose fire departments or cigarette smoking or what? Are there other good
Oh yeah,
examples that
the
we're not?
the the auto safety,
Yeah,
where I feature 5 physicians in there who realize from seeing their patients, like one was a plastic surgeon, one was a neurosurgeon, one was an ear, nose, and throat doctor, one was actually an Air Force surgeon. They would see the results of accidents,
hmm,
and they would look at the cars and realize, yeah, okay, the accident happened, but the car could be better designed so that it wouldn't happen. That something like the seatbelt.
yeah, yeah. The
Um,
seatbelt. We grew up without
right.
them, right?
And then, the retractable steering wheels and the dashboards. The dashboards from very old cars were not padded and the buttons would stick out all the way.
Yeah,
And actually, when cars first came out in the teens and the 20s, there was no safety glass. So you can imagine that.
yeah. Right. Oh God. So there are So there are lots of, in your book, I'm sure it flags a lot of these or highlights a lot of there are a lot of examples of where the collective action was successful and did create safety and has prevented for in large part or very insignificant amounts has prevented serious problems.
Yes, yes. There's a caveat with that, in that they made a huge dent, but there could be much more done in
Yeah.
all those areas.
Yeah. Your book is called The Preventioneers.
Yes, and the reason I came up with that title was because I consider these people as pioneers in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you take the words prevention, pioneers, and you get preventioneers.
Yeah, I like it. Like it. Hey, thanks so much for being on the podcast and educating us about this topic.
Well, thank you for having me, Ted. I greatly appreciate it.
Have a great day. That's it. Thanks for listening to Flanigan's EcoLogic. We'll see you next time.